Hey, it's Fitz, and if you don't know who I am, here's a quick bio. I'm a veteran sports journalist who writes, does TV, radio, daily YouTube videos, and I'm a longtime podcaster. Also, I have metastatic stage 4 prostate cancer that came out of remission in 2023. During the pandemic, my doctors advised me to stay at home, and the Life of Fitz podcast was born. 5 years later, I'm back in my cancer battle and continuing this podcast with season 6. As I call the many people I've met through my 35 years in sports journalism, and those who are involved in my cancer journey. Plus, we'll add in a few friends we've met along the way who are facing their own obstacles in life. Welcome to my life and the Life of Fitz podcast. Presented by the great people at Blueville Nursery in Manhattan. This week's Life of Fitz kind of goes back to the origins of this podcast. Born in 2020, when I couldn't leave the house or shouldn't leave the house, I just started calling friends and you got to listen. And some of that was getting reacquainted with friends I hadn't spoken with in a long time. It seemed like the perfect time to do so. We all were stuck at home or mostly at home, and let's have a conversation. That is the origin story of this podcast. And we've evolved over the years. The conversations have gotten a little bit different, and now we're calling people that, well, I'd never met before. And this one is completely different. This one goes way back. I met Shanele Stires when I was a young sports writer. My second job in the profession, I was covering high school sports starting in 1989 at the Salina Journal, my hometown newspaper. It was a cool job. It was weird to be back in the gymnasiums that you played in or hung out in, and now be working and covering the athletes who had been you just less than 10 years before. And Shanele Stires was one of the best I covered. She was an amazing athlete in so many sports, volleyball, basketball, track. But her best sport was probably softball. And in my one true coaching experience, somehow in about 1990, I ended up coaching a Salina women's slow pitch softball team. I don't remember who was on the team, how this came about, but I knew this. I went out and got Shanele Stires to be on that team, and we were pretty good because of Shanele Stires, not the coach. I had not spoken to Shanele Stires since, as far as I can recall, that summer of coaching her softball team. She went on to run track at K-State, go to Cloud County Community College, convert to basketball, come back to play basketball, put up incredible numbers at K-State, go play professional basketball, into coaching. And now, 35 years later, and she has been on my Life of Fitz list for a couple years, I finally tracked her down. She's a head basketball coach, women's coach at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California. And again, we exchanged some emails, but this conversation is the first time we have spoken in 35 years. It was good to see her face. This is one of the best humans I've come across. She was an incredible young woman, an amazing athlete, and basketball got her. But as she mentions later in this conversation, that might not even be her best sport. Let's get it going now with my friend, Coach Shanele Stires in San Luis Obispo, California. Let's bring her in. And there she is, Shanele Stires, a longtime friend, and we chatted way too long before we started. We were going to have to talk about some of the same things and pretend it's brand new. Okay. But I think we established that. What year did you graduate high school in Salina?
I'm afraid to admit it, but 1990.
90.
Yeah.
So I came to Salina in 89, and I covered high school sports. So I covered you. That your senior year was my 1 year of covering high school sports in Salina before I transitioned over to other stuff. And then I coached a city league slow pitch women's softball team. I don't know how I ended up coaching this team. I'm going to be honest. I don't remember anyone other than you because you were our best player by tenfold. And I had a blast. But I think that's the last time we talked before this moment.
I think you're probably right. It's been a while, but it's great to see you again. And you know, that's the great thing about athletics is it you know, you just have these people that come and go in your life, but they always leave indelible marks and memories. And those are great times. So it's wonderful to see you.
Thank you. You're exactly right. 95% of the people you meet, or more than that, they're in your life for a moment and then they're out. But once in a while, there's a person that your life path crossed with and you want to reconnect. And I'm going to be honest, you're one of them. You're I don't know how to say this. You're one of the coolest people I've ever met. You know who you are. You're a great athlete. You were an incredibly kind person. Plus you made me a better coach. And that's always what's important here, coach, is love the players who make you look good.
Right. You have to, especially nowadays.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Well, let's dive in here. You go to Cloud out of Salina, which was not uncommon back then, Cloud County, but you end up at K-State and you had a great career. I mean, I was just looking at it, 8-9 rebounds a game, 16.5 points a game over your 3 years. Incredible. What was it like playing? And if you want to go off on having to play inside Bramlage, because we just discussed before we started recording the abandoning of Ahern Fieldhouse, which is behind me. By the way, the other shot that you can see a little bit of a sign, that's from Nichols Hall. And that says, "We want a field house."
Is that after the fire?
This is before the fire. This is when they're still playing in there. So that photo is from post World War II. So the late 1940s. So some of those dudes in that photo probably served in the war. It's really cool. It's a time capsule photo, but they're in the rafters of Nichols. And they were trying to get Ahern Fieldhouse built, which they did. And it was an incredible venue. And then we decided to leave it. And we're on the same page. We shouldn't have ever left Ahern Fieldhouse. Never.
You know, when you go by there, even today, that it just has a special kind of energy that is unlike. It reminds me, if you've been to Duke and you've experienced Cameron Indoor, it has a very similar vibe to that, especially from the outside. But then obviously when you go in, it's just hollowed ground. And I know when I was an undergraduate at K-State, like it just meant so much to so many people, because I think a lot of kids went to those games with their moms and their dads, and it was just a family tradition. And you know, I think I shared with you earlier, my first time in there was like circa 1977, 79, right in there to a Harlem Globetrotters game. And that's really when I fell in love with K-State. I was like, it was magical. And as a kid to go in there was just really, really special. So I hope they do something significant with it, because no offense, Bramlage, we love you, Bramlage, but there's just nothing like Ahern. It's just a special place.
I'm going to say something that will piss off some of my listeners. KU did it right. I said it. They renovated their old barn and went with it. And it has some shortcomings. It certainly does as a modern facility, but it's pretty cool. And now I'm going to piss off the KU fans. Ahern was a lot cooler.
It was.
It was amazing. Yeah. And the loudest place I've ever covered sports by far.
If you think about it, at the time in the 50s, you know, KU and K-State, not only was that rivalry really kind of embedded at that point, but both of those programs were tops in the country. I mean, K-State was going to Final Fours every couple years. KU won a couple national championships, I think in 52, and was it 57? They lost the triple overtime game, I think, to North Carolina.
Yeah.
Like they were knocking on the door then too. And so was K-State. And there's just so much incredible history between those two programs. And so to not be in that building. So again, I hope they do it right. Maybe they make some sort of museum or something that I think fans of the incredible basketball history that is Kansas and Kansas State basketball can still celebrate just the incredible coaches, legacies, traditions, the players, both on the men's and women's side.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Incredible.
It's for a sports Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
it really is.
I hope they do something great with it.
I have a different idea for it. Most people don't support this idea, but you know how Ahern comes to that peak?
Yeah.
Paint it orange and have the world's largest Whataburger. Just make it the Ahern Whataburger.
The Hearn water burn. I'm gonna have to let that really sink in.
Yeah.
So
Plus, I get to eat burgers, which is something I like to do. But I will be fascinated to see what they do with it. And I've always said, in terms of men's basketball, leaving Hearn was the first step. But 1988 and what happened, losing in Detroit and KU going to the Final Four with a lesser team.
Yeah.
K-State had beaten them twice that season.
Yep.
And finished higher in the conference. And then they go on and win a Final Four with that Danny Manning team, which was really good.
Yeah.
But that was the turning point. That's when the two programs went, shh.
I think so.
Because they had been pretty parallel for about, 40 years. So it's sad. So you left K-State. Where'd you go after K-State? You went to the WNBA, correct?
Well, so when I finished, I was planning on actually staying on the coaching staff and getting my master's. But toward the tail end of the summer, I signed with an agency out of New York, and I ended up securing an opportunity to play overseas. And I played in Greece. So I played in Greece, came home the next year in the summer of 96. And that's when, I was still training in Manhattan. I had an apartment in Manhattan. And the Olympics that year was like, kind of similar to the boom last year that you saw with Caitlin Clark in Iowa and what that did. The Summer Olympics in 96, I think, really elevated women's basketball. So then the ABL, the American Basketball League, started up, and it was basically started out here in California by some big time money people that were passionate about Stanford women's basketball. And so I went to a combine in Atlanta and tried out to join the American Basketball League. And that league I played in for 2.5 years. It went defunct in Christmas of 1998. It folded. I played for the Columbus Quest. And then the WNBA came in and kind of took the cream of the crop, the best players of that league, in kind of one wave. And then I went back overseas and I played in Sweden, put up some really, really great numbers, had a blast, enjoyed the experience, made some good money, and then was drafted by the Minnesota Lynx. And then at that point, I think I was 27. And I played for 3.5 more years, and I played in Minnesota for the Lynx. And then in between there, I played one more season in Portugal. And then at about 31, 32 years old, I just was, the kids were getting younger and more athletic, and I was starting to lose a step. And, and like a lot of people, 20, 25 years ago, we weren't making a ton of money. We weren't making the kind of money that these kids are making now. And so I just felt like it was the right time to start coaching. And so I pivoted into coaching, and in 2003 stopped playing, and then got my first coaching job at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, and then have kind of bounced around as a coach the country since. And now I'm at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California. And interestingly enough, as we were talking before we started recording, it's so similar to Manhattan in like 1995. 22,000 undergraduates, vet med, engineering, agricultural school, rodeo. It's really, really similar.
Crazy.
So I feel like I'm kind of living a different Manhattan K-State experience, but I'm on the West Coast. We're about 10 minutes from the ocean from where I'm zooming right now. And so you can go to the beach anytime you want. The weather's incredible. And it's really California's truest college town. So it reminds me a lot of my K-State days.
That's awesome.
The downtown has an Aggieville vibe. So I'm pretty blessed, because it's a little bit of a full circle moment that I'm having here talking to you. So just incredible.
So you're starting your 4th year there?
Yeah, starting my 4th year here. It's a high academic school, though. It's got really, really high academic standards, and I think it's interesting because as I took the job, not only did I maybe misevaluate how difficult it was going to be to get kids in, because it's almost got an Ivy League approach to it.
We found a difference between it and Kansas State right there.
Huge difference. The Harvard of the Plains, right?
Yeah.
The Harvard. It's the Harvard of Riley County.
Yeah, exactly. You graduated high school? You're in. Come on, let's go. It's just grad school. That's what we're supposed to do. But
yeah, entering my fourth year, I love it. We got a great group of freshmen coming in, and we've not necessarily been as competitive as I would like to be to this point. We did make the WNIT 2 years ago. Had a really nice group and kind of put it together and played some good basketball. So still kind of figuring out, I think, what works and what doesn't work and as K-State basketball fans will attest, I think you see the same thing happening with the men's and women's programs there, where they're still trying to navigate some of these changes, the portal, and NIL and paying players. I think it's just a little bit of an interesting time, and I think I'm learning as I go, like a lot of other coaches, and trying to become a dinosaur in doing what I love and trying to stay innovative.
Everything that has changed about college athletics has caused me to do something I vowed never to do. Use the phrase "back in my day," because it has changed so much. I'm like the grumpy old person.
Yeah,
we used to have to blow up the basketballs before practice. Just make stuff up. But
it really has changed. But at its essence, I think kids want to be coached. I think they love the game. They love it in their own way. And obviously there's just, there's some different bells and whistles that you have to navigate. But Tim, I feel you, man. Like I'm kind of in that same boat where I try not to say that because I want to be the hippest 53-year-old on the planet. I want these 18-year-olds to connect with me. And so, I try to really watch saying that to them, because when you say that to them, it just goes right over their head. They do not care. They do not care about our day.
No, we won't even get into.
But I feel you.
Life before cell phones. It was. As a kid, I just disappear for hours upon hours, and the parents are like, "Good, he's not around. Good, go." Could be doing crime, but just you're not in my way. Much different world. But has the transfer portal impacted you as a program? I mean, a lot of non-power institutions just get talent rated constantly.
Yeah. So we had our two leading players that were slated to return. Both were double-digit scorers. Both were all conference. Both had multiple years of eligibility left. One's going to Wake Forest, and one's going to Gonzaga. And so now we're rebooting. Start over again. So it really makes it challenging to have, and that's the thing about this level, that, when a scholarship was a scholarship, the relationships mattered more. You could develop a relationship. You could out-recruit somebody. It's much more challenging, I think, in this day and age to necessarily outwork somebody. You can outbid somebody, but outworking them, I think, is maybe going by the wayside. And that's really what I've done my whole career, is I've outworked people.
Right.
And so now I've got to outsmart them. I got to kind of figure it out. But what I am excited about is we've got some really talented freshmen coming in, but I've got to kind of work forward and hope that we can raise enough money to keep them if they bubble up and play the way that the past two kids that we just lost do. And that's really what it comes down to, is do you have the finances to be able to put together a roster that can be competitive?
What a mess.
It is.
Things a mess.
It is.
But that's the world in which we live.
It is.
We were discussing before we started that Matthew Driscoll, left North Florida, a somewhat comparable type of program, where he was getting rated every year, and said, "The hell with this." He's been there a long time and is now associate head coach at Kansas State. He made that career choice. Rebuilding every year. It's worse than being a JUCO coach. At least at JUCO, back in the day, you'd get 2 years out of people before you had to. But now it's almost rebooting every year. Every year.
Well, and to your point, I think you make a really good analogy between us and junior college. Is not just getting rated, but I think there's still going to be some other mid-major programs that have kids in their program. And to us at this point, we don't have those players in our program today that have been in our program now for multiple years. And so that's the challenge, I think, is can you attract a kid, but then more importantly, can you retain them and can you develop them while they're a part of your program and not allow them to move on so that you can have, the opportunity to really compete and play at the high level? Because, what like we talked about when we started recording, I think that's one of the things that, and again, you can certainly see both sides of this argument in the men's tournament and the women's tournament. I mean, you want to talk about chalk. It was just chalk the whole way through, and I think what made March Madness maddening were those Cinderella stories, those upsets. And so that's one side of the story. The other side of the story is people would tell you that, well, now you're just going to see the best basketball all the way through. And to me, I think the best basketball is when you do get a Davidson like you saw several years ago on the men's side with Steph Curry, where they're this underdog story, or Florida Atlantic a few years ago, Wichita State. And then, we mentioned Southwest Missouri State when they kind of went to the Final Four on the women's side in 2001. I think stories like that are going to kind of go by the wayside because it's just going to become harder and harder for those lower level programs to compete against those Power Four level programs.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to, I don't know where we're headed with this. It's in a selfish way, it's made my job not as fun. Because it's so transactional. And, a kid I love it at K-State, and then the next year be off and gone because someone gave him a nickel more. I don't think that's a healthy way for kids to view this. I mean, maybe it just comes with age that maybe that extra buck isn't worth the transitioning to starting all over. But here we are. This is the world in which we live, and our grumpy old asses have to deal with it.
Well, the only thing I'm hoping for is that the NCAA or the powers that be can somehow regulate some of these things so that it makes the playing field a little bit, cleaner. Right now, it really lacks parity. I think each institution is really in their own world, and not only in how they want to prioritize name, image, and likeness or revenue sharing, but more importantly, how they prioritize athletics. And I think, those are all top down issues, but will there be a day where we can have that kind of parity again? I sure hope so. And I hope it's sooner than later, because, time's ticking, and I'm not necessarily in love with, when you're 18 to 22, you're really impressionable. And I think, maybe slightly too young for people to be navigating this kind of money and this kind of finance, when kids should really just be thinking about, in my opinion, playing the sport that they love, being with their teammates, and getting a great education and having a great experience between those two things. And
I think the most disturbing thing I'm seeing is kids that are happy at their school and those around them, most notably parents, basically push them into the portal for profit. Instead of just letting them exist where they're at, maybe for less money, but they're in a good place, they're in a safe place. That bothers me. If your child's happy, don't risk that, for a little money. It's a lot of money. I'll sell my child. I don't have a child. Luckily, that's why I don't have a child. You give me $5 million? Okay. He doesn't brush his teeth at night.
You raised some really good points, Tim, like the pressure from parents. But I think when you're able to back up and you look at this whole thing from a bird's eye view, it's a little ridiculous. And again, I don't want to get too dark or too political, but I'm just going to land on this. There's people in parts of the world that are struggling to live. Mm-hmm. They're embedded in war, they're embedded in turmoil or whatever.
It's poverty,
and we're embedded in paying kids to play a sport that they love and get a free education. And it's fascinating to me that we've got it so good in this country that those are the things that have become almost front and center, versus if you were in some other part of the world,
wouldn't matter.
Getting money to play basketball or football or whatever would be the least of your concerns. Surviving would be your number one concern.
Let's put it this way. I've got, after we're done, I've got different lunch options I can do. I've got clean water I can drink, and I have plumbing. And that's really important to me. So now I get to bitch about the transfer portal. You're so right. You're so right.
Well, as fans, we want to fall in love with kids and have that relationship with them over the course of time. We want to see them grow. We want to see them develop. And I think that is something that, we all come to athletics for, is that sense, that feeling of I'm involved and a part of something bigger and greater. And when you develop an affinity for somebody, it's really hard to really get to know them and fall in love with the team when they're gone. And I would say that that's maybe the one thing on the women's side to this point, because the WNBA really doesn't allow you to come out early the way it does on the men's side, which I think is maybe a motivating factor in a lot of these decisions as well. Maybe after the money that they're being offered on the men's side. But on the women's side, you're seeing much more stability, and you're able to kind of follow kids for a longer period of time and fall in love with them and maybe become a fan of that program, because there's a high, I think women tend to transfer maybe a little bit less. I don't know the statistics on that, but I do think that that's one of the things on the women's side that I see that reminds me of what it was like, following the K-State teams of the 80s and 90s, or, the Duke program or KU, whatever program you followed. You had the opportunity to really get to know those kids over the course of several years. And now it seems like you don't really get a chance to know the kids on the same level, because they're, to your point, they're kind of in and out.
And we look at it from our perspective that sucks as a coach, excuse me, or a journalist, but it really hurts the kids at the end of the day. The relationships you have with your head coach typically is long lasting. I mean, if you stayed with someone for an entire 4 or 5 year college career, you have a bond, and you kind of have an older person in your life that is important. Now they might have 4 different head coaches, and you wonder about meaningful relationships. That's an old man thing to worry about. But yeah, it's the truth. I think they're missing out.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's one of the reasons why I got involved in coaching, is because I had such a great experience in college at K-State, and those relationships matter and mean so much to me. And so you want that for the players that, that you're here to help. We mentioned earlier, we lost a couple kids in the portal, kids that, had great relationships with their mothers and fathers, spoke to them, frequently and regularly. And obviously we're going to miss those kids, and we're going to miss those families. But to a lot of these families, it seems as though following the money is kind of become the trend or the in thing to do. And unfortunately, that's something that, I think every coach in the country right now is dealing with on some level.
It's interesting to me because women's basketball, for the top college players, they can make more money with NIL than the WNBA. Yep. So it actually kind of helps maintain women's basketball in a different way than men's basketball, because
that's right.
A lot of players are actually at K-State. Aoka Lee, her body's given out, but she had a couple years of making some pretty decent money because of NIL, because she was a fan favorite and she was valued at her program. So she's not going to play in the WNBA, but she still has a little something in her bank account, which is cool, which is awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a great example of how, a young lady like her, who really just had an incredible career, was able to profit and put some money away. Hopefully, she takes care of that money, but you're spot on. because the WNBA doesn't allow you to come out early, and because it still isn't necessarily on the same level that the NBA is, what these kids are getting in college far outweighs what they can make when they go pro. And so for that reason, I think, on the women's side, I think you're gonna see some really good high level basketball for the next several years until either of those factors change.
Well, you brought me into a great topic here, and I want to talk about the WNBA because I feel like women's basketball is on the precipice of making a breakthrough. Like, Caitlin Clark's brought a lot of attention, but the game's at a higher level now. But I feel like the WNBA is screwing it up. It's like the state of the WNBA right now is maddening, and they have they have their Magic Johnson, their Larry Bird, and it's almost like the players are pissed off about it. Well, give me your thoughts overall on where the WNBA is at and where it might be in a few years.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I think, and again, I can't recall when Bird and Magic came into the NBA specifically because I was a kid.
Yeah,
I can't specifically remember. I know that there was a lot of talk about, race at that time, similar to how there's a lot of talk around race, in particular, right. Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark and their fans. And I think there's a lot of fodder that has gone on social media in regards to that. But it does seem like a lot of the older, more entrenched players that, have kind of been
paid the dues,
the face of the WNBA, and who've kind of paid their dues. I think they feel as though their game and their careers are similar to Caitlin, and I think it's probably a little bit of navigating, seeing young talent come in that maybe you can't really weigh that out. But I do think that she has come in with a sensational amount of fanfare. She's changed the way that the game is played in a way that I think is similar to the way that Steph Curry kind of sensational, especially during his day, the 2014 to 2022, when he was really at the height of his powers. I think she really has changed the game. But I think, to your point, I think some of the older players have not necessarily embraced her to this point. And I think that some of the younger players maybe feel as though she's stolen some of their shine. So I just think that it's going to be really interesting to see how her career kind of plays out, because I do think that she has really opened up a lot of fans that maybe were dormant previously and have brought them to the table. And I think that has just created a certain level of, because it used to be more of a niche market, and I think now it's going to become more of a global brand because she's just that much. She's so fun and exciting to watch. But I think there's going to be a level of controversy around here for years to come, just because I think she's so different than maybe what we've seen previously in terms of her shooting range, her ability to share the basketball, distribute the basketball, and to have the kind of confidence and swagger that she has. And, I think we're not accustomed to seeing that in that way. And then she's really made the game really, really fun to watch for the average fan. And I think because of that, she's just brought so many fans to the table that didn't really know much about the WNBA before she came along. And so I think it'll settle down, and I think they'll hit a stride with it. But I think right now there's just a lot of different feelings about her, from the players to the fan base. So it's going to be interesting next several years, because there's also a lot of talk about expansion and seeing how the league navigates that, and hopefully the quality of basketball doesn't suffer as a result.
Right. I agree. I mean, because they're playing at a high level right now.
Yeah.
And part of the issue, we got to address it, is that you mentioned her swagger. She's a cocky little shit. She just really is. And she's got to back it up.
Yep.
But boy, if you're 5 years her senior and have been putting in your dues. And now she's like screaming, not in your face, but adjacent to your face. Yeah, I wouldn't like that either. But boy, she can hoop. Holy
She sure
crap.
can. Like, you can't take that from her. I mean, she's really good. And, there's always that talk by talking heads about, who the face of the NBA is when LeBron,
Right.
moves on. I think everybody knows that the torch has kind of been passed to her. I think whether it's USA basketball or the WNBA, she's here to stay. And I do think that she's kind of the face of the league now for the next 10, 15 years, or however long her career is.
I'm going to say something that certainly NBA fans will find outlandish. She might be the face of basketball.
I mean, that's
she might be the most recognized basketball player right now in the United States. It's outside of LeBron, but those type of players. But yeah, I mean, she's pure gold for marketing.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah.
But yeah, she's special. She's fun to watch, and she's been great for that league. If they'll get out of their own way, it's like, come on, guys, just let's get back to playing basketball here. I'm not an Andrew Reese fan, by the way. I had the very similar game. Great rebounding stats. They were all off my own misses. But it's a good way to get the game going. I had 10 and 7. 6 of those were off my misses that led to the 10.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you could have really come of age during this time, I mean, people would definitely swarm to watch you play.
Yeah. Athleticism is,
and I feel like we missed out on something. But you're definitely contributing in your own way, and you're sharing your greatness. So we
thank you.
That.
Thank you. Let's take a short break and hear from our sponsor, Blueville Nursery.
For competitively priced landscape design, irrigation, and lawn maintenance, turn to Blueville Nursery, a family-owned business with more than 50 years of experience. You can trust the Blueville team to design and create a landscape that will accentuate your property's aesthetics. And visit our garden store 6 days a week for the best products in the area. From ornamental trees, shrubs, and flowers, Blueville has it all. Blueville Nursery, located on West Anderson Avenue in Manhattan, Kansas.
Now, let's return to the studio. So what were all your different coaching stops that got you out to California?
Oh, man.
You've had some. Yeah.
So, being an assistant coach has really been a journey, because you have to have a service mindset. You're serving your head coach. So when I stopped playing 2003, I went to Ohio University. I was there for 3 years, and then I was actually going to get out of it, and I was going to stay in Ohio and do camps and clinics. There's such a rabid basketball fever out there. Like people, there was an appetite for it. But while that was happening, and we had kind of finished at Ohio, I had been offered by Stanford, the University of San Francisco, UCLA, and San Diego State. These were all affiliated with people that I had played with in the WNBA, to come out and work summer camps. So I go out to, I think my first stop was the University of San Francisco, and Coach Have, who recently retired, but was a heck of a player in her day. She played for Pat Summitt at Tennessee, was a 2-time All-American at Tennessee. I came out and I worked her first ever basketball camp. She had an opening on her staff. She hadn't hired that person yet, and by the time camp was over with, she'd offered me a job. And so I ended up kind of putting aside going to Stanford, San Diego State, and UCLA and working their camps. And I took the job, moved, went back to Ohio, moved my things to San Francisco, and that's how I ended up on the West Coast. And after a couple years there, San Diego State had reached out, and Coach Burns, who's now the associate head coach at USC, she was the head coach at San Diego State at that time. She hired me, had a great run at San Diego State, 2 Mountain West Conference championships and a Sweet 16 run, where we beat Texas and West Virginia. Again, another one of those mid-major runs that was really remarkable that I don't know that you're going to see a lot of anymore. And then when that was over with, I was offered a lot of different jobs, but as an assistant coach, I needed recruiting coordinator experience. And so Stetson University in DeLand, Florida was the only place at that time. This was like approximately 2010 that offered me the recruiting coordinator position. So I knew that was kind of the next step in my progression. So I moved to Florida, and I don't know if you've ever been to Florida or that side of Florida, but I didn't love it. I loved being there. I loved my job. We ended up having the number one turnaround in the country that year. We went from 5-26 to, I think, 21-7, and won the Atlantic Sun, played Tennessee in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And then from there, had an opportunity to go to Nebraska, Omaha as the recruiting coordinator in their first year of Division I, and work with a Kansas buddy, Chance Lindley, who's one of the all-time leading scorers in the state of Kansas. He was at Sunrise Academy, Christian Academy. He was one of the first that ever come out of there. He had come from the University of Arizona. That was his first Division I job. So then I was at Nebraska Omaha for a year during their transition from Division II to Division I. Then at the conclusion of that year, Jennifer Azzi, who was the 1990 Naismith Player of the Year at Stanford, played against her in the WNBA. She's a legend, was on the 96 Olympic team. She was the head coach at the University of San Francisco. So they hired me back at the University of San Francisco, was the associate head coach there. That was an associate head coach position. 4 years there, go to the NCAA tournament. She steps down in the fall. I'm thinking I'm going to be the next head coach at the University of San Francisco. They go a different direction, as it happens in college athletics. Athletic directors make decisions all the time, and it was definitely one that I didn't agree with. But now I'm thinking about how I'm going to pack up my things and where am I going to move back to Salina? What am I going to do? Because it's October. And then California State East Bay came calling. They called me. They had an opening. It's about 45 minutes from the University of San Francisco's campus. It's in Hayward, California. And then next thing I know, I'm the head coach at Cal State East Bay, lead them to 2 conference championships, one in 2017, and then my second one in 2022. In 2022, we finished the season ranked 8th in the country at Division II. And then that's when Cal Poly came calling in the spring of 2022. And I have been the head coach at Cal Poly for the past 3 years in San Luis Obispo. And here we are today, zooming with Fitz, reliving all the glory days of K-State athletics.
And life in Salina, the hard streets of Salina.
Mean streets of Salina.
Yeah, the mean streets. It was tough growing up in Salina.
It was more than you know, more than I care to share on this podcast.
I bet. That is the journey of an assistant basketball coach.
Yeah,
that's what life's like. It's kind of gotta suck not to have roots anywhere. Is this your longest stay someplace?
I've 6 years at East Bay, and then I think before that it was 4 years. It's bless you. It's really been a journey, because you really. I'm going to be really, really honest with you and your listeners right now. I literally did spring cleaning Memorial Day weekend a few weeks ago, and I finally unpacked things that I moved 3 years ago when I moved here. That's what it's like. It's just always in boxes, stuff's always in bags. You think you still have that, you're not quite sure. What did I leave in Salina? Is there anything that I need that's in Salina still? My dad still does live in Salina. So I do get back there from time to time. But it's usually for not very long. I'm in and out. I came back actually last summer to Manhattan, and that's when I saw, man, the facilities that they have are just incredible. And then Jeff Mitty was so kind. He spent maybe an hour with us, showed us around the ice family training facility, and then a couple of other people that we just happened to run into, showed us around the volleyball facility and some of the updates they've made in Bramlage and then the football facility. And, K-Staters are lucky. It's kind of a golden age of athletics there. I mean, they're really, the facilities are just, they've got to be top 10 in the country, I would assume.
It's amazing. It really is. And, the one upside of not having a Hearn Fieldhouse as an athletic facility now is everything's compacted right there. And you walk from one facility to another. It's all pretty much there. So it's really cool. It's incredible. Were you shocked, not just by the facilities, but Manhattan as a whole, how much it's changed?
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that really blew me away is like they've just really done so much to the town itself. How they've kind of created that loop around the mall and how they've kind of built around that. It's really amazing the stuff that they've got going there.
Yeah,
it's a special place. Let's just call it what it is. Even with our feelings around what they did with the field house, it still really is. I think it's one of the best college towns in the country.
I agree. I'm biased as hell, but the job isn't the only reason we've stayed here doing this in Manhattan since 1998. It's the community. It's the people. It's an amazing place. It's just wonderful to live here and raise two dogs. The dogs change. The damn things die, and I'm against that. I'm very against that. But yeah, we got two pretty good ones that are sleeping in the studio. It's hard to raise dogs. They just want to go out and drink all night.
Yep.
Stay out and party.
I got a couple small ones. I got a couple Frenchies. They're pretty cute. Yeah, they're pretty cute.
They're great. Do they snort?
They snore and they snuggle.
Yep.
That's really what they do. They snore and they snuggle and they eat. And you got to walk them a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's been rewarding raising them for sure.
The great thing about raising dogs is I haven't had one that's wanted to go to college. So I haven't had to pay those bills. It's great.
That is good.
Apparently I got dumb dogs. None of them want higher education. I don't know.
Well, that's probably really good. And you wouldn't want them paying the price to come to Cal Poly because it's a bill now.
It's probably a little. It's probably not LA or San Francisco, but there's probably a lot of sticker shock in living in that kind of place.
When I came from both times, when I came from Ohio the first time to California, it frightened me. But then when I came from Nebraska the second time back to California, it petrified me because I went from paying $500 a month in rent in Nebraska in 2012. I was paying $500 a month in rent, and I had a house. I had a 3-bedroom house that I paid $500 a month for. Then I come to California in San Francisco, and I'm looking for places to live. I find this 1-bedroom, kind of run-of-the-mill 1-bedroom apartment that's about a block and a half behind the campus, and I knew I had to grab it, and it was $1,700 a month. That was 2012. I went from paying $500 a month in rent for a 3-bedroom house to $1,700 a month for a small 1-bedroom apartment. And that had no washer and dryer, a small bathroom, small bedroom, small kitchen, small living room, just a basic, and I think I was 40 at that time. So, to go from, having a house to an apartment was quite an adjustment. And then that sticker shock, when I wrote that check, frightening.
Yeah.
But you get used to it. And that's why they call it sticker shock, because you do unfortunately get used to it. But there's still times now where I go to the grocery store and I go, they want how much for that avocado? I know.
They grow them here.
Are we importing those?
It's great. Yeah, it's I couldn't do it. I couldn't as much as I love the ocean. By the way, I was born in Florida. Yeah, they made me leave at 6 months old. I was just causing too much trouble, apparently. And then we ended up in Kansas, which is kind of the Florida of the Midwest.
It really is. I mean, it's a destination.
I think because of that, I've got this affinity to being near the ocean, which is ironic that I live in Kansas. But yeah, that would be awesome. 10 minutes from the ocean, incredible. Having a bad day, I'm going to go stare at some waves.
For sure. And it's just so easy to get there. And because of where we're located, there's not a great population where you have to fight traffic to get to the beach. You also really don't have to fight with a lot of people to get to the beach. Our beaches are obviously they're popular out here, but there's just not that influx of people. There's not that kind of mass of humanity to fight that you're used to seeing maybe when you go to the beaches in Florida or when you go to, Southern California or, Hawaii or, Mexico. So it's really nice.
Yep. Well, I'm so happy to reconnect with you. I mean, it's
great to talk to you.
I've had you on my list for about 2 years. And really you're like the perfect person for this podcast in many ways, because it was about reaching out, reconnecting, and just having conversations with people who have been meaningful in your life. And you have been. Yeah, you don't. It's odd. I was a reporter covering you, then I kind of coached you in a way, and whatever that was. But I've always loved you. I always thought this is a special person and an amazing athlete. I did want to ask you this. You were so good in softball. What were your other sports? You were a basketball player, but I feel like there were so many other sports you could have played. Back then, we played it all.
So basketball was my worst sport. And when I tell my kids that I coach, I don't think they believe me because they see my WNBA jersey. They see all the championships that we've been fortunate enough to win, the ABL trophy. But so my dad and my brother wrestled. My brother is 5 years older than me. And so I grew up going to these kids federation wrestling matches in these small Kansas towns every Saturday during the wintertime. And so when I was 8, I actually forged my mom and dad's signature on a permission slip and snuck into town with my brother and did a wrestling practice. They found out about it. My mom and dad were upset. My brother was upset. And finally my dad said, okay, let's let her do it. She's going to get her tail kicked and she's going to fail. And then this will all be over with. This is like 1980. I was like in 3rd grade. And so I go undefeated. And I think I lose in the state championship. And then like the next year I go undefeated and win the state championship. And, then I was in like 5th grade or something. And I was like, what are the girls doing during this time of year? Because I should probably be doing that. Because like now the boys are hitting puberty. And so that's when I started. One second. So then I kind of started getting interested in basketball, but I really wasn't very good at it. Like basketball requires so much dexterity. And so I think, fast forward several years to high school, I got cut in 8th and 9th grade from the junior high basketball teams. I was an all-state volleyball player. We went to state my senior year. Yeah, I was like all-state. Really loved volleyball, but and then track and field. I was really good in track and field. In fact, that's where my first full scholarship was to K-State. My first year, I was on a full track scholarship.
Oh, that's right.
And I felt second in the Big 8 indoor, second outdoor. Was invited to the 1992 Olympic trials for the shot put. I weighed about 260 pounds. And then I went into John Capriati in the spring of 91 and I said, hey, I'm going to give this full track scholarship back to you. I'm going to go play basketball. I called up Brett Erkenbrack at Cloud County Community College. Right. And I said, hey, I want to play basketball. Could you give me a scholarship? And he did. And my mom and dad were like, what are you doing? You just gave up a full scholarship. You weighed 200. You got cut in high school. You didn't get recruited to play basketball in high school. Like, what are you doing? And at that time, we didn't have AAU. So there was never an opportunity to get exposure. You either played with your high school team, or in my case, like you played pickup at the Y and then you worked. And so I just taught myself how to eat differently. I taught myself how to train differently. I lost 80 pounds in 3 months. Then I was a junior college All-American. Into 91, 92, got re-recruited for basketball by a ton of schools. K-State was one of them. And I was like, I would always go to the games at K-State my freshman year. And I was like, I feel like I can play with these guys. And so then I came back and, was fortunate enough that, things kind of lined up and I played a lot, which is really what I wanted. Because at that time, there was no thought of playing professionally or thought of the WNBA or thought of having a professional career. I just wanted to play against the best. And I knew if I played at K-State, my family could see me. And I always loved K-State, loved my experience there. And so then when that concluded and I had the opportunity to play overseas, and then slowly but surely, things changed in this country and was able to put together almost a 10-year professional career. So it's just been magical to see the world through sport and to meet all these incredible people. And like you mentioned earlier, and I'm so happy to hear you say that because, it's so great to be reunited. And I think sometimes you don't even recognize in this journey that you're touching somebody else's life in a positive way. And so for you to say that means the world to me, because I think you get a little bit older in your career and you realize that's really what it's all about. It's not about the money that you make. It's about the lives that you touch. And, to have a platform like you have and to share your passion and your love for what you do with others and the journey that you're on with others, that's going to leave a legacy that, and that's really what this whole thing's about. So for me, that whole journey, it's like I said when we jumped on here, you kind of set off on one course and then all these other things happen and you meet all these incredible people, but you kind of always, you kind of always know in the back of your mind at some point you're going to come back home. And I think talking to you kind of brings me back to some of those simpler and easier times where, the game was the game and it was so simple and, it was just a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun growing up. And like you said before, playing all the different sports, at that time, all we had was slow pitch, but I would say softball was probably my best sport. But there was,
that's what I thought. If you had grown up with fast pitch softball, that'd have been your sport.
Yeah, for sure. Because I could just crush the ball. I could hit it a mile. I could field. I do have knock on, the one thing I do have athletically is because I can't run, I can't jump, but I'm smart, but I have good hand-eye coordination.
Right, you do.
Really good hand-eye coordination. So I could field the ball, those kind of things. But I
told people that my best coaching decision was I don't even remember who played first base, but they had to be fearless because Chanel's going to throw the ball, and it was probably going to be whistling as it crossed the field. A lot of guys wouldn't want to be on the other end of that. So it was, that would have been your sport.
Memories. Such good memories. It was just a lot of fun. Wasn't that? That was a fun summer. That was a lot of fun. We had a good time. We had a good team. I don't even remember who was on that team.
I don't either. I don't know how I ended up coaching it.
I don't either. But I felt like every weekend we weren't sure who was going to show up.
Yeah.
We were like, is she coming? I don't know. And this is before cell phones. So once you got to the park, all bets were off unless you were willing to drive over to where they lived to get, to shake the bushes, get them out. We're like, is she coming? I hope she's going to show up. But I don't remember how you ended up coaching us.
I have no clue. No clue. I remember practices. I remember a few games. I don't know. But we were good. We were pretty good. And Yeah. Before cell phones, it's hard to explain to the kids is that there was a lot of trust involved. You might have told your buddy you'll be there next week for the game.
Yeah.
And you just had to trust they were going to be there because you couldn't call them up on a cell phone and remind them. You might call them the day before on the landline. But still, you had to go to the park and say, is this guy going to show up? Is this gal going to show up? It was just a lottery. You just had to have faith in people. We don't have faith in people anymore because we can call them at any time.
Yeah, these phones have made communication ubiquitous, but not face-to-face communication. That's the one thing that I will say is with coaching young people now, their soft skills, their ability to converse. And so we spend honestly, we spend a lot of time really intentionally trying to build those skills up, especially during our summer session, where they're not in full-time classes. We spend a lot of time on that because that has become really challenging to get them to kind of be able to talk to one another and work through whether or not they have issues or they're executing something correctly, and to be able to kind of problem solve on the fly has been one of the biggest things that have come out of this experience for me being a head coach is just, helping young people navigate kind of that maturation that it used to be much more natural for all of us just because we grew up without that ability to kind of hide behind technology. And so these kids need that face-to-face interaction kind of fostered a little bit, but once they get it, they got it, and they kind of run with it. And it's really cool to see them grow and flourish. And I don't know, it's pretty special to get to
kids grow up knowing a lot of stuff. I'm convinced your average 8-year-old knows more about sex than I did when I was 16. Everything's out there for them to have access to, but they do struggle sometimes with social skills because they're not face-to-face. They're always devising it, which I am in favor of. The less face-to-face I have with other human beings kind of works now for me. I just text me. Don't call me. Text me. I don't know. That's who I am. Sean, I'm just a grumpy old man now.
Well, no, I mean, you've earned the right to be a grumpy old man. That's the one thing too. Like we gotta pay our respects to those that have come before us. And I think, let me ask you this: what are the one things? What's the one thing you're most excited about? During the off season, you do some of these Zooms and you're able to have some of these interviews for your podcast. But what are the things that get you excited about not only these conversations, but as it kind of segues into the fall and obviously football season? What are the things that you're looking most forward to?
I love covering college football because it's like with 12 games, it's like a 12-chapter novel. You don't know how it's going to end. You don't know the plot twists, and it's so segmented. Unlike basketball, you play and then you take off and then play, and so I enjoy that. But this time of year, I love to garden. My mom still freaks out about that. My mom's still in Salina. She freaks out that I like to go garden. But I really haven't had the ability, strength to do much the last few years. And I'm back out there this year, hauling rock, and I have no muscle mass. I'm so much weaker, but that's how I'm trying to get a little bit back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my testosterone's coming back around, and I'm beginning to feel a little better.
I love that you're gardening. What is there anything in particular that you grow?
It's all like ornamental gardens. We bought a house in Manhattan. It was kind of the place in the 1960s. It was built in 68. Cotton Fitzsimmons lived across the street from this house, so we're not far from sports complex at all. But we're in a cul-de-sac, and we got a corner lot, so we have a half acre in the middle of Manhattan. And it doesn't look like much because it's really a wedge-shaped lot. But then, so we've got an area we call our North Lawn, I'll throw up a photo of it. That we're really proud of. It's hostas. It's all shade property. A lot of hostas. We've raised a lot of hostas and sent them to college. That's where all of our college money has gone, to hostas. This is me saying this, and I still have problems that this is where I ended up. I like hostas. I like begonia flowers. What the hell happened to me, Stires? What?
I got to be honest with you, though. You just mentioned football season as a 12 chapter novel. You just write your novel. You're just in a different chapter. And in this chapter, gardening is maybe the chapter that we're working on right now. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
That's good for the soul. Just get out there, put your hands in dirt.
Amen. And, isn't it funny how like we have all this technology, but going back to the basics is really healing and really cathartic. Quick question, because I don't follow K-State football the way that I should. Now, I follow it a little bit out here, and when they're on, I always put them on, and I thought they had a really, really good team last year, but like
hit the wall.
Arizona State couldn't get over the hump. That guy just ran all over us.
Mm-hmm.
How good are we going to be this year? Because we were ranked
really good.
Better than last year?
Yeah, I think so. The quarterback, Avery Johnson, he's a really cool kid. I mean, he's got his crap together. And he got injured last year at Colorado. The biggest win of the year was winning at Colorado. It was a great game. But it was kind of a cheap shot. Late hit to the chest, and then he landed on his hip. And he wasn't the same until the bowl game. And he's a runner. He could throw it, but he's a 4-3 kid. And so losing that element kind of shut down the offense, and it didn't work out so well. Got to keep them healthy. But yeah, they should be good. I'm really looking forward to it. And the one thing I absolutely love about K-State sports right now is the coaches are all quality people. I mean, I love working with this group of coaches. They're top notch. And for the most part, particularly in football, they're still recruiting the same kind of kids that I've always covered. Yeah. Kids that have a sense of self-responsibility and take care of stuff. And I think they've realized that they need to stay in that lane. That's the lane that allows them access to greatness without getting the 5-star defensive tackle out of Alabama. Yeah. So Chris Kleiman does a lot of things like Bill Snyder, but also with his own style, more of a player's coach. So it's cool. It's fun. It's great.
I love it.
But if you're in town, let me know. I sent you my phone number. Reach out. I'm always here. If you want to bitch about something in life, I'm good with that. You can just text me. If you got a referee that you absolutely hate, and you know there is,
I'm gonna send them your way.
Yeah, just let me know who they are, and I'll start tweeting at them. I do.
I tell you what, I might need to work on getting our team out to play K-State. Maybe that's the move. Is we bring the Mustangs to Manhattan.
Hold on, they're the Mustangs?
They're the Mustangs.
Oh, you are a full circle moment.
Oh, I know. And like literally all I do now is like every day I wake up and I'm like, here we go, Mustangs. Here we go.
That's easy. That's easy. You did that for years. Shanele, love you. Great to see you.
Great to see you too. Thanks for everything, Tim. Good to see you.
You bet. Appreciate you joining me. That one was really fun and fulfilling. And that's really what the original purpose of this podcast was, to reconnect with people. 35 years is a long time. And we just kind of picked up where we left off. A great person. If I had a daughter, I'd absolutely let her play for Shanele Stires. She is a wonderful role model and an absolute freak of an athlete. She could just do it all. And I was so blessed to have covered her in high school and blessed to get to coach her briefly, even if it was slow pitch softball in Salina, Kansas. But the impression she made on me has stuck with me. And I'm not lying when I say I have often wondered how she's doing. And this podcast led us back together after 35 years. He's a pretty cool cat. And I'm really glad she carved out enough time. And we took some time. We talked about 40 minutes before we recorded, about 20 more after we recorded. That's about a 2-hour conversation as we reconnected at many levels. And I appreciate you watching and taking part in this version of Life of Fitz. And as we wrap it up, men, of course, remember, get your PSA scored. It's a simple blood test. Ask your doctor if you're 45 and over to go ahead and do it to give you that baseline score you might need if you ever run into issues with your prostate as many do. Go ahead and tell that doc, I want that baseline score. Please try to not take no for an answer, because a lot of them won't do it. And trust me, you want that score just in case. That's it for this week's Life of Fitz. I'll talk to you real soon. I appreciate you listening to this week's edition of Life of Fitz. And thank you to all the great people at Blueville Nursery for sponsoring our show. This has been a Spirit Street production.